complicated and whatever. It's definitely good career-wise.
Yeah.
In fact, I want to do a show on that again because I want to try and promote that idea of, how do you expand scope to take on more than just acquisition. So maybe we can do that one as well at some point. And by the way, you should definitely pump it all into ChatGPT and say, "Oh, who's the best guy we've got?"
I did actually. I shouldn't really put it in a public domain.
That's it. Keep it purely for personal use. Like, do
you
not
can
publish
imagine
that.
how much people were ranting, and I had to change the company name on there so it didn't know who it was. So I had to change it to ABC instead of QMT. But anyway, I definitely used it. But I was looking online. I think some teams obviously have very specific data analytics teams and business intelligence teams they could leverage off. So I wonder what larger companies use. I suppose you got more complex platforms like Lattice and Culture.
I honestly think you probably shouldn't. In other words, the bigger enterprises probably are still tiptoeing in amongst it. But crunching performance reviews and actually producing reviews has been kind of declared on an anonymous survey, I think by Filtered, as one of the top 10 things HR are actually doing with generative AI. There's obviously a lot of work. Imagine just typing up 100 reviews, like marking homework, right? I mean, you're not going to want to do that.
Yeah. I asked my team, I was like, what should I do? And they're like, why don't you do a word cloud? I was like, a word cloud? Is that still the thing?
It never goes away. To be honest with you, it never goes away. It's kind of a good visual to look at. So yeah. Anyway, folks, we are live, everybody. Welcome to Brainfood Live on Air, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. It is episode 253, and today we're going to be talking about something that's mega interesting for me, mega interesting for everybody, because it is the hot topic. It is about skills-based hiring. Is it rhetoric or reality? And we're going to have an honest conversation today, folks. We're going to try and advance the conversation through debate. Because obviously skills-based hiring is one of those things that developed momentum kind of pre-COVID. COVID obviously stopped all kinds of momentum. Then remote took over as the main thing. And now remote is kind of going away and in comes back skills-based hiring. And it seems to be the thing everyone wants to do. Now, I have got a few concerns. And like I said, last week, I kind of outed myself as a critic of skills-based hiring primarily because of the practical implementations. Like, what does it even mean? Do we know how to do it? Are we end up just going to anonymize CVs and call it done? So I'm going to be sort of having conversations with a bunch of really interesting people from across the spectrum of opinion on where we're at with this. So this should be a good show. If you do have any opinions as well, do make sure you put them in the comments. Do make sure you have a dialogue with us, whether you're watching this on LinkedIn, Crowdcast, or whatever. And by the way, for the people who are watching on Crowdcast, why don't you complete the poll on the right-hand side of the screen, where basically it says, do you think it is rhetoric or reality? Because I'd be quite interested to know what your view is on that. So why don't you go ahead and complete that? That'd be good for us to see. Okay, quick sound check. That's actually the sound check for Crowdcast. So if anybody actually starts, take a look at the poll, Christine. Are they actually voting? That could let us know whether they can actually hear me okay. For the people who are not on Crowdcast, you're watching this on my LinkedIn or anybody else's LinkedIn, Rob Walker's LinkedIn or whatnot. We've got 100 people watching on my LinkedIn. That's amazing. Let me know if you can hear me okay on that channel. Just drop me a comment on the LinkedIn comment thread there. Should see me and Christine here. So let us know whether that's okay. Okay, we seem to be okay. Although I've immediately dropped to 99 reviews. So yeah, I've had enough of these two. I'm not going any further. All right, cool. Let's what are we doing? We need to review the newsletter now, or should we just go? Oh no, we need to thank our sponsors, of course. Folks, one of these days I'm going to forget to thank our sponsors, and they're going to want the money back. So friends, we can't run Brainfood Live without our sponsors. Every week somebody steps up and says, you know what, we want to keep the conversation going. And today it's actually a hyper relevant company because this is a company that is involved in trying to improve the talent intelligence you have within your company. It is TechWolf, folks. If you don't know TechWolf, you should. Coolest name, I think, in recruitment tech. I thought there'd be a gaming company or something. So, this is HR tech, folks. But let me not tell you any more about it because we've actually got a Yasmin Karimi from TechWolf. She's going to come on and tell us all about it. Let's have a look at Yasmin and see whether she's here. Yasmin, don't disappoint us. You need to be in swag here.
Follow up to that name as well. I think everyone's expecting something very
we want drama. We want drama here. You know, we want drama. Let's see it.
Yeah, I saw Dune 2 this week as well. So that was a nice.
Good, bad, ugly. Oh, there's Yasmin.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, how are you doing? There she is. She does actually have the swag on. Look at that.
Nice.
Boom, there we go. And it's a great name, by the way. And we need to start there, Yasmin. Like, was that from some sort of branding exercise that you thought, okay, we're going to do it this way? Or did you actually start as a gaming company before you pivoted into skills and HR tech?
No, although that sounds like a very cool story for me to be able to tell, but unfortunately that was not the case. We've always been working with skills, and well, it's definitely a name that captures people's attention.
Absolutely right. Well, Yasmin, whilst we've got you here, why don't you tell us a little bit, firstly, who are you, what it is you do, and then what it is that TechWolf does, and who should really be most interested in it?
Yes, yeah, sure. So my name's Yasmin. I lead product at TechWolf. And TechWolf is a skills infrastructure product that helps enterprises have the best data on their journey to becoming a skills-based organization. So maybe we just start with that, right? Like the skills-based organization, there's a lot of buzz around it. What does it actually mean? And well, I'll explain it kind of from my perspective, at least. Enterprise organizations are large. They're very much used to working with jobs, but this comes with its own set of problems. Managing your workforce purely with jobs is outdated and lacks granularity. Essentially, jobs don't give enterprises insight into how one employee differs from another with the same job, and they tend not to evolve. So to use a practical example, a machine learning engineer from 1998 looks very different than a machine learning engineer in 2024. So you need to go more granular to keep up to date. And skills is the answer. So skills-based organizations can better organize and plan for their workforce. By thinking in skills instead of jobs, you can tell one employee apart from another, and you can evolve your enterprise's strategy with the market. So how is it being done today, and what is the problem statement? A lot of systems have the ability to work with skills, but the landscape of HR technology is extremely fragmented. Today, skills in your learning system, for example, and skills in your talent system can look completely different. And enterprises don't want this fragmented approach to skills data. Skills data can only really be shown when you have access to different sources as a separate problem. So one piece is fragmented. The other is, do you have access to the right source of data to be able to showcase the most granular level? And to have accurate skills on your employees, you need to be able to extract that data from different systems. It doesn't just live in your HR system. It lives in business systems where employees are actually doing their work. So the problem we're focused on solving is giving enterprises a consistent single language for skills in all of their systems, and being able to showcase skills that are granular enough to actually be trusted by employees and the business. So how do we do this? With skills infrastructure, we focus on getting data from key systems across your business, and we use that to create skill data that's accurate, unbiased, and granular enough to be used. And as I said, we get that data to where it needs to be, whether it's your HR system or business systems, all in the background. So we're the data layer that powers the applications used by HR and the business inside enterprise organizations. So to give a couple of customer examples, and we're doing this for a variety of enterprise organizations, but I'll just pick out a couple who have moved towards skills-based ways of working. So GSK is a large global pharmaceutical company, and they use TechWolf's granular skill data capabilities to understand technical skill sets for their research and development departments to help manage their R&D pipeline, essentially. So they're using the skill profiles, the granular skill profiles that they can get from TechWolf to move those unique skill sets around. Another example is Booking.com, one of the largest online travel companies. They're another customer of ours, and they're using TechWolf to have a consistent language for skills across their talent and learning systems, so that they can better understand the skills gaps of their organization and be more dynamic in the way that they manage their talent. Of course, we work with enterprises directly, but we also work very, very closely with a lot of key partners, Workday being one of our key partners. And Workday is an example of a partner that has capabilities with skills. So they have Skills Cloud, and TechWolf is essentially partnering with Workday to help their customers by enabling them to benefit from skills data that's basically being used outside of Workday. So through our capabilities, we're able to extract the data from the systems that I mentioned before, so the business systems, and it's essentially enabling Workday customers to benefit from untapped sources such as Jira or Confluence, where employees are actually doing their work. And we keep that skills data up to date as new sources of data are coming in. And this really prevents employees from having to keep logging into Workday to manage their skill profiles on an ongoing basis. And then in terms of some of our product capabilities, so our product can integrate into any system to get the right context to infer skills. We produce a completely tailored taxonomy and job to skill mapping that's built using AI, enabling customers to get a view of all of the skills across their organization and to govern and manage those skills in one place. And we sync that data to where it needs to be, enabling customers to see the same skills wherever they log into. So if that appeals to you, get in touch with us via our website to have a demo and hear more about how we're making skills-based ways of working simple and practical for enterprises.
You've just ruined the show, Jasmine. You know, we're meant to have a debate on this, and then you've just like.
We've got the answer.
No, that was great. That was a really great overview, and actually it kind of reminded me of technology that was like really kind of very promising, even like five even more, man, probably 10 years or so ago. The category of like organizational network analysis, you know, where you're trying to pick up information from email, from collaboration software. You're trying to figure out exactly how people are behaving in the business. And then from there, you can start making assessments as to what's actually going on, because you go through a normal performance review, which is just basically two people having a conversation and agreeing what the narrative is. Like, what does that actually, is that actually information that's useful in terms of identifying what skills are? So it sounds like TechWolf is sitting in that space where basically you can surface up behavioral data, which is, I think, you know, obviously much more evidential than self-reported data. Before I let you go, Yasmin, because I know you do need to go, don't you? But like, it sounds all very expensive. I'm sorry to say, it sounds amazing. But is there a certain size of company that really this works for? And, you know, what are the businesses that really you're targeted towards? And, you know, there's going to be a bunch of companies that really don't need it at this stage, or there's nothing that really it's not the right product for that level of maturity of a company.
Yeah. So interestingly, we're actually working with skills practices internally within TechWolf, and we're a lot smaller than a lot of enterprise organizations. But typically, our customers fall into the enterprise bucket. So that's anywhere from 5,000 employees plus. And I mentioned a couple of customers who at least have 50,000 employees. So I think the larger bracket is really where we play best. That's also where the workforce tends to be very complex, where there's a lot of data sat in systems that we can extract from and get data to. So that's really the world that we play in.
Yeah, fair enough. That's brilliant stuff. But I think everyone who cares about sort of skills and skills-based management and hiring, it's definitely something you need to be aware of, because I think that at the end of the day, this is something that you will not encounter, let's say. So Yasmin, really great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for telling us about TechWolf. You have a good day, and you close that meeting, because I think you're going to have a really important one, aren't you? So so good luck with it. Good to see you, Yasmin.
Thanks, Yasmin.
It's great. Really cool to see sort of people who can articulate the story very well.
Yeah.
And very interesting to see sort of I'm excited about this category of business.
Yeah, very also thinking a lot about like internal mobility as well, as you're speaking, like, you know, internal hiring.
100%.
You know, when you over 5,000 people, a lot of roles actually can be filled internally, and it's so hard to actually even get internal people to apply, let alone if you just map it all out and say, have you considered actually, you know, working for this role? So yeah, you
can't get people to apply. That's the problem, because if you're internal, an application comes with a political consideration. You know, it's not a straightforward thing. So I think we know why it doesn't work, and it needs technology to help you with it. It ultimately needs a matching or recommendation service.
Implications for L&D would be incredible as well for the sort of technology like this. Anyway,
we're going to talk about this as we bring the crowd on, but let's just review the newsletter real quick. Give us a quick overview. What was interesting from last week, Christine?
Oh my God, so many. It was a good one this week. The 10 years of Hacker News one was interesting. So I post on Hacker News from time to time. I haven't realized it's been around for so long. So for those of you that don't know what Hacker News is, it's like a Y Combinator backed like jobs. Well, it's a message board, and they've got a thread in there called Who's Hiring, HN Who's Hiring thread, where companies can post for free on the first day of the month. So someone just did a whole analysis of trends over the last 10 years. It's typically tech roles. So it's, quite generic ones. I think we already know things like remote work trends. So San Francisco fell largely over since 2020. Europe is actually coming up, has been steadily increasing over time the last few years. Obviously, on the AI side of things, pretty much non-existent in 2014, but growing exponentially the last few years. But what I found super interesting was the interns versus seniors. So I think the early days, there were a ton of intern posts, and more recently, it's more seniors. And it pretty much reflects, I think a lot of companies are going, yeah, I'm not going to hire a mid-level engineer, I want to hire a senior. But that, I think, begs the question, right? Like for a lot of interns, it means it's more competitive. We're seeing that right now. Like we just posted a research software engineer intern role, and we had like 253 applications in 2 days, which is mad. But it means there are more jobs and more companies looking for senior and management level people. So how are interns meant to bolster their skill sets and their projects? So yeah, it's interesting seeing that trend.
It's actually a really concerning trend, because what is the pipeline of this talent coming in? And by the way, folks, it's really good to watch to look at this, because I think you can trust that data, because it's literally historical 10 years people posting it. Interns not getting jobs, like the jobs for entry level in tech has just disappeared, because tech companies are saying, you know what, we can just hire experience now, or we want to hire experience. Tech young people, we don't have time to train for them. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But that really does, like, how are people meant to get experience in this way? They're not going to do it. So it's very short-termist, but you can understand sort of why tech companies would do that, because there is more talent available than there was before, and you can grab a lot of that capability without having, I guess, to take a larger risk and spend more time doing training and stuff like this. But yeah, it's concerning for sure.
Yeah, I guess students are savvier now as well, right? You imagine by the time they finish university, they would have had, a couple of projects live and something to show at that point. And Stephen mentioned in the chat, senior students who are in final year, maybe in the US, but at the same time, nowadays a lot of people who are interning who probably have projects and mobile apps already on the app store. So it's actually
I'm not even sure that's true though. I'm following this really funny guy called Denise on TikTok. He's this Turkish fella who obviously he's a young kid. He's like first year at uni. He's doing like trying to apply for jobs, and he's now got it because he's not interested in jobs per se. I think he's trying to do a community page, but because he's trying to hustle for some cash, he's recording his job search journey, and it looks like it's a nightmare for that type of educated. He's got GCSEs, A levels, going to university, studying maths. So he's a smart kid, and he's got work experience. And he's saying he can't do anything, even for minimum wage. And he's sharing rejection notices to say, like, why am I rejected? Because literally there's no skills required for this job. You know what I mean? Like, there's no skills required for this job. Just turn up. Are you willing for this money? And he got rejected. And he's saying, what is going on? So it's actually, I think it's really tough for young people at this point in time, but it's kind of a grind for a lot of people here in the UK at this point. All right, give us another one, Christine.
Yeah, I guess that ties quite nicely to the next one, which is the soft life, why millennials are quitting the rat race. I actually follow Abba Daisy from the Hustle crew, and she's featured in that, which is really nice to see her in there. But it really reminds me of my favorite comedian, Ali Wong. Anyone who knows Ali Wong on Netflix, she talks about, I just want to lie down on one of her clips. So it kind of reminds me of that. But I think essentially, there's a big focus on like from an employer perspective, like what can we learn from that, right? And I think it just underscores the importance. Well, we all know this, again, work-life balance. We know that candidates are looking for more, well, in this generation are looking for more personal fulfillment and well-being. What can we think about engagement and retention if people are kind of thinking about, quitting the rat race? What can we think of? What can we do from an employer perspective to support them on that? But ultimately, we still need to hire people, right? So it's an interesting balance, I think.
We need to redesign jobs is what it is, because this is a really interesting phenomenon. It reminded me a lot of the sort of lying flat era, back in Asia 2021, when people saying, listen, I'm out of this rat race, it's too much. And a lot of people are feeling this way. And I just think, okay, maybe is there a way in which we could design jobs that are like 10 to 20 hours? But it's just distributed across more people,
Yeah.
right? Like you just say, look, I need 50 hours of work. You get 100 hours of work. Just hire more people. Find some sort of way in which you could efficiently hire people in this fractional way, so that they can do 1 day a week. And there's lots of these are all talented people, by the way. Go and read the article. All super educated. They've all come from like, you know, good jobs, so to say. They just didn't want to grind, especially where the grind is not delivering the promise that, you know, of that sacrifice. 10 years, you know, pay off the mortgage, get a nice house. All it's not happening. So it's like, why am I doing this 10 years?
And it's going to get worse progressively, you know, especially in this climate, in this geographical climate. But it's interesting. I think a lot of them also quote, you know, they're now kind of in their kind of 30s. So they were saying this was all experiences they learned and harnessed like over the last 10 years. And they're just trying to pass on the message to the next generation. Like, look, we've lived through this. You shouldn't have to. Right. So it's also interesting that was another perspective that they were trying to suggest. And also, like, what is our traditional markers of success? Right. I think in the past is all like high paying jobs, you know, climbing up the career ladder, and having to rethink that as an employer. Maybe people don't want to climb the career ladder anymore, and they just want to go home and have a better, and see their family and lie down.
This for me is actually very important, because if you think about the promise of technology, technology is there ultimately as a labor-saving device, and yet we can see that the ways of technology that have kind of changed the world of work haven't actually reduced the amount of work we're doing. We're working as hard as we ever have. And so we need to really think about, you know, why is technology not actually producing this relief from this too much work? High levels of mental health problems, we have burnout crisis, we have all of this stuff going on. And really what you have to think about is, who is collecting the value of the technology that is deployed? And my argument is it's getting captured by the people who own the companies. Now, this is not hammering entrepreneurs or hammering anyone else, but we need to find a way in which the productivity, quote unquote, the gains that we gain from productivity are more equally shared between people who actually contribute to that productivity, rather than us saying, oh, great, we now have AI. All right, I want to take on, you know, instead of 30 requirements a year, I'll take on 300. Brilliant. That is not, I don't think that's a really smart way to do it, but that's kind of where we've got to really be conscious of it and argue the case. But anyway, it's a really interesting scenario. All right, give us one quick one before we bring our guest on. We'll get on with it.
This is easy. I think this one, obviously very triggered by this one, but it was obviously the TikToker, the one that didn't wear makeup for her interview. You know, it's funny because I Googled it and I was like, you know, what is the tips, like top tips for makeup? Where I just said, like, is it appropriate to not wear makeup in interviews? And like the first page, actually Indeed has an article about this. The Muse has an article about this, all about 13 tips for perfecting your makeup look, your interview makeup. I was like, what? Like this, I thought that was about the whole post. Like Reddit has got loads and loads and loads of topics about it. But yeah, so I was reading through the tips. I'm like, what are they? But actually, they're not saying like, oh, you should lather it on. Like it actually says, don't wear lipstick. You know, if you gotta wear lashes, don't wear lashes. It all just kind of says to keep it neutral. And what's funny as well, it suggests things like not looking as tired. So the whole point of wearing makeup is just so to make you look more alert, rather than actually saying, you know, to make you look better. So that I can understand and can get on board with. So I think is actually looking in it further and looking at her video again, now that I've kind of read into these articles. I mean, she did say like she's done her hair, she wore earrings, so it sounds like she's done everything. I just kind of thought, was she just wearing a hoodie or something for the interview, which she didn't. So I'm just, I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence on this one. Obviously it kind of ventures into like discrimination territory. You know, is it unprofessional to not wear makeup in an interview? So this one, I gotta say, I was quite tricked by it in the beginning, but I'm surprised. I'm very surprised at the amount of articles there are online talking about how the DIY and the tips on how to wear makeup for your interviews.
My reaction is exactly the same. It's a very triggering concept, and I think everyone had the same thing. It's like, what? This is totally outrageous. But then you watch again her argument, and she didn't seem like overly bitter. She was actually asking a genuine question. Which was, is wearing of makeup, and this is obviously now also gendered, but I don't think it's particularly about gender in this. For her, it was all about what makeup signaled. Because if people who didn't watch this video, essentially She got rejected for a senior VP of HR jobs. This is actually in our space.
The tech company, yeah, it was, yeah.
So she's probably maybe even watching this. Melissa, if you're watching this, if you want to have a chat, let me know. But anyway, she goes into this interview, fails the final interview. She feels what's going on here is really strange. She gets a message back. She chases for feedback. And it was the recruiter that gave the feedback, right? So I think either the internal recruiter or recruitment agent gave the feedback, and he said, look, apparently the hiring manager, who incidentally was also another woman, ultimately thought that your appearance didn't fit. It signaled a lack of motivation. So in other words, her lack of makeup was communicating to this hiring manager that she was not sufficiently motivated for the job, because of course anybody would wear makeup looking their best for the final interview. That was I think the psychology of the hiring manager. And then she took to TikTok to say, look, is this good or bad? And it's just triggered a massive conversation. But I think, Michael, I need makeup, bro. You don't need, literally, this goes beyond sort of gender at some point, because for sure I need help. But it's an interesting question, because there is a communication we make through appearance. And there was a comment thread on the newsletter to say, one guy said, yeah, I wore a hoodie once, the hoodie example, and he got rejected for wearing a hoodie. And everyone thinks, fair enough, wear a suit, wear something with a collar at your final interview. And I think, you know what, we are communicating some way visually. And, you know, we probably need to, I tell you what it is. It's one of those like safety tips in a dodgy city. It's like, you shouldn't have to do that. But it maybe confidence to do so, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, yes, I should freely walk into whatever territory I need. I'm a citizen of this country, no problem. You know what? Sometimes you've got to be smarter and, you know, work to your own advantage.
You remember a few years ago, or maybe this was last year, a few years ago, where I think it was like she was applying for a city job, a role in the city, and she got told off for not wearing heels or something like that. I mean, that was like, definitely a few years ago. And that was also a big debate then. And that was kind of the earlier days. And there's a whole thing like, well, if she's working in front office in a bank and client facing. So there's a whole debate about, okay, well, what is the function of the role?
Well, what is appropriate, right? What is appropriate?
So I get that for the interview versus, but I think the debate here is as well is, you know, from what I'm hearing from her is she's done everything that she can. She's blow drying her hair, she's wearing her earrings. Like, what more does she, what more do you want? What are you actually using? And I think that ties in quite nicely to our skills based.
All right. Well, Dan's just stepped up to say he looks like a slob. So let's bring Dan on straight away and see how he looks. I don't, you know, to be honest with you, the socially popular thing to say is that it shouldn't matter, right? We get that. However, the poll I'm running from the newsletter yesterday has got now 300 odd votes. And the question was, how much do you think appearance matters in a leadership hire? Like, what contribution do you think appearance makes for a leadership hire? And let me tell you this, the vast majority of people say it contributes at least 25 to 50%. So it does make a difference. I mean, it's one of those where it's not fair, but if you want to kind of get the job, you might need to kind of, you know, just deal with unfairness of it. But anyway, let's we'll do that show. Let me know in the comments if you want to do a makeup show. Firstly, I'd like to have some advice. It's a disguised way to do a tutorial for me. But on the other side,
AI tools for that nowadays, Hung. Like you have like this whole blurry filter situation.
Yeah, but I don't want to communicate something that isn't true. So I just want to make you look a little bit more alive. You know, it's like this is all about, you know, do I look like a human being? All right, we have Matthias here. Matthias, this man does not need makeup. So Matthias, great to see you, sir. Not yet, anyway. I mean, at some point. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself, man? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yes, I'm a senior director of talent acquisition and employer branding at Amnify, Series B, deep tech startup in Berlin, Germany located, but also we have people in the US and Latin America, so we're quite globally spread, and that's why skill-based hiring is an important topic to us.
Yeah, great. And you've actually been one of the people that's been really vocal in your behavior, you're doing, and your evangelism for skills-based hiring. So wonderful to have you here, Matthias. It's great that you've developed that expertise. Oh, we have Dan Logan here as well. Dan, you don't quite look like a slob, although you're very close, mate. Very, very close. But that's okay. Dan, why don't you quickly introduce yourself, who are you, what it is you do?
Yeah, I'm Dan Logan. I look after talent transformation for a company called One Advance, based out of Birmingham. We're a software SaaS company, and I only just recently joined there in January. I've been working a fair amount of time across kind of talent VC, but now in the PE back world, which is a little different.
Fantastic stuff. Great to see you, Dan. I'll share everyone's links in the chat in a minute, but let me just get all this stuff started. And we have Maria here as well. Maria, thank you for joining us. Can you quickly introduce yourself, who are you, what it is you do? I don't think she can hear us. Maria, can you hear us? No, she can't.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. So yeah, I just asked you to introduce yourself, Maria.
Sorry, yes. So I'm Maria, and I'm a fractional people leader based out of Munich.
Fantastic. Great to see you here, Maria. And we have Andrew here as well. Andrew, wonderful to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself, who are you, what it is you do?
Yeah, Andrew Greer, talent acquisition in the main. Usually operate around about head of talent acquisition level. Very industry agnostic over the last probably 10 years. So yeah, very mixed bag on the industry sectors, but focus on the processes, methods, ways of doing things. So bit of an all-rounder on that.
Fantastic, and great to see you there, Andrew. Sorry, I was just distracted by what looked like a fluffer that just arrived on Dan's sort of screen there. Like, what's going on there, mate?
I was going to put my fanboy hat on for you.
Oh my good
Oh.
Come on, mate. How on earth? How on earth? And I know that's nothing to do with me, but I need that back now. All right. Listen, let's talk about skills-based hiring. Firstly, let's do some definitions so that we kind of share the terminology and we're not like wandering off in arguing in the wrong way. So can we quickly just go around the table and just define it as in as succinct a way as possible? Like, what is skills-based hiring? Matthias, let's go with you first.
Yeah, I would refer to it as practice that focuses on job candidates or candidates' observable and measurable skills relevant to the job, rather than only focusing on credentials, for example. That would be my definition.
Cool, very good. Dan, your thoughts on what it is? We'll get into the goods and bads later, but what do you think it is as it currently is understood industry-wide?
Yeah, for me, I think it's just a popular trend amongst employers that want to kind of broaden the talent pool, include more diverse and qualified candidates. I won't jump into too much at this stage, but I think it's pretty much the way we've always done things. It's just coined a new term in the here and now.
Yep, very interesting. Maria, your thoughts?
I'm with Dan on this one. I think it's just kind of the something that is in fashion at the moment. It's trying to solve some sort of problem, right? But I don't think it's quite solving it. I feel like we're going back to quite a few decades ago to the old competency model, etc. Yeah, let's discuss about the details. But I think I'm not convinced myself.
Yeah, that's great. And Andrew, your thoughts? Like, what is it as a definition? Like in your work and your thoughts?
I think probably with the last two opinions as well. However, I think the problem we've got across every industry in this is that we don't know what the definition is. That seems to be at the core of it. Everybody's trying to give this a better, stronger name or describe it and define it, and nobody really has quite nailed it yet. So it's back to that rhetoric or reality that you've titled this. I suppose the rhetoric has created a reality. It's just a trend that's been going around for a long time.
Interesting. Yeah. So Matthias is battling on his own here. So I might have to switch my position and suddenly become a skills-based hiring evangelist. And Christine, you got
I'm pro.
But listen, let's switch to the poll, and actually, it's actually reflective of what we're seeing. So we can see there's a skepticism at the very least. So rhetoric or reality, like 2/3 think it is currently pretty much just a rhetorical or a kind of a reconceptualization of something we've always done. Now, why do we think we've got to a skeptical position? I mean, is there any theory you have that we've got to this level of skepticism? Because it seems like it's still quite a new concept. And is there any reason why people are suddenly starting to be a bit more reactive to it? Any thoughts on that? Let's go to actually, Christine. I'll go with you on this. Like, what's your theory on the sentiment of the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, I see what Maria and Dan are saying. I guess it has been around for a while, and maybe it's just more the applications of it, because like maybe Matthias and myself, like we've been working in tech for a while. Like in my last few roles, purely, you know, we've been using like HackerRank and whatnot, and purely just hiring engineers using skills-based hiring. So for us, maybe it's just more it just does what it says on the tin. Maybe we're not looking at it more holistically enough, which what I'm hearing from the rest of the panelists is maybe outside of the tech realm as well. And I'm probably just very focused in one vertical.
Okay, really interesting point there. Basically, where the skills are more measurable, perhaps it becomes more to the reality. So let's say there is like a measurable function that you wanted something to perform. You test for that. That's skills-based hiring. Tick the box, he's in. I want a bricklayer because I'm hiring a bricklayer to lay some bricks. I can get this person to lay some bricks. I can measure how fast and how well he does that. Boom, that's a skill that's in. Where it's difficult is where the skills are like ambiguous. Like, I need a problem solver, or I need a team player. I need a, you know, one of those intangibles that I don't know who it was that LinkedIn always come up with this. What are the most in-demand skills? And they are a long list of intangibles. It was like, yeah, we always wanted these, but how exactly are we meant to assess for them, find them, measure them, whatever? We don't know. Matthias, your thoughts on the intangible skills aspect? Like, have you detected this as one of the problems within sort of the implementation of skills-based hiring? Like, some skills are easier to measure and assess?
I think, first of all, what everybody said is true. The definition is not unique enough. It's not standard enough. Everybody has a different understanding, and that does not help for sure. When I looked into this topic of skill-based hiring, I looked like, where are the standards? Yeah, the global standards worldwide of a definition of skills, right? But let's look at the one topic that was mentioned, problem solving. Yeah. So, for example, I think nowadays, if you go for competencies or skills or however you're going to do this, everyone is capable to say, look, I have a couple of problems for the role that I'm hiring for. I will put this in front of a candidate. I'm gonna, say, look, can you tell me how you approach this problem or that challenge? And then you observe, how are they going to solve this for this role? I think that is something that is very easy, very pragmatic. And, you can do this with a recruiter, with an engineer. Engineers do this in pair programming, for example, right? You can say, look, a marketeer or an employer branding manager that is doing a presentation and then is selling you certain topics. And then you deep dive on the Q&A to figure out how is this going to be. It could be different ways of how you solve a problem. Some people are in love with case studies. The other think, they think there are other ways to do that. But what I'm trying to say here is you can observe the way someone solves problems. Are they jumping to the conclusion to the problem right away? Are they asking questions? How do they gather information in the discovery process? I think this is all tangible stuff. No matter what job you do, of course, I'm not talking about blue collar workers here. Probably just the people who are in the office who are, need to use their brain to solve complex topics. These things are tangible for me, where you observe skills quite easily, right? And when I think about skills, I think about three areas. I think about core essential skills, or so-called soft skills, right? Then you have the functional skills, so everybody, and the hard skills that we refer to. And then you have, for example, leadership skills, right? If you go for leadership principles or certain leadership skills, how do you define leadership, right? Every organization does this differently, and therefore this is where it gets a little bit messy, right? Because what we believe is leadership skill for my company might be a little bit different for another, right? And so how do you then say and make sure you are aligned? But going back to what people said, skill-based hiring is not so much different than using competencies. The frameworks, the structure, everything we do there is pretty much the same, but it's the way of what skills you look for, how do you define them, what seniority do you have, and what is expected for each seniority to actually set this up. And maybe we go more into that, because what we also do, it's not just focusing on skill-based hiring, we are focusing on skill-led organizations. So we have skill-led career frameworks. We do performance reviews like that. We actually help people to do performance reviews faster and better because competencies are too complex. Yeah, and if you look into the competencies and what this all means, it's a huge beast. So maybe these are a couple of the answers here.
Yeah, I'm convinced. Yeah, it's done, lads. I mean, I'm totally convinced. What's wrong with any of that Matthias has said? I thought it was really, really quite compelling. Any thoughts on that, Andrew? Go to you first.
You can't argue with that. I think it certainly sounds to be working in that environment, but I still got this nagging sense of we can't really define all the skills that we need for everything, and even taking it back to what are skills. And we typically, when you talk about skill-based hiring, it's going up against what's described as being traditional, i.e. degrees and qualifications. But what are those if they're not the ability or the skill to learn? So it's this kind of jargon that we keep swimming around in. But certainly, you can't argue with what you just described in terms of how it's working in your organisation. But that's great. But looking at the attitudes, behaviours, are those skills? Is empathy a skill? Can it be trained? Can it be developed? What you described, I think you mentioned soft skills and amongst that, but really that for me is the question. What are skills and how are you specifically measuring or taking against them? Looking at different industries that I've operated in, some places you don't need any experience. You can come in and if you've got the right attitude and behaviours, can be empathetic, kind, for example, then we can train you. But in other areas, you really need hard either physical skills like manual dexterity or even those kind of the managerial type skills, people skills. And I think this is where we get lost in the skills-based hiring. It's not new, it is just a trend. And like people have said, it's been around for a long time. I've been around for a long time and it just keeps popping back up, the same sort of things as to how we're hiring. And even in the methods and the processes that we use, we keep getting refreshes with things that have been done before. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe we're getting new people coming into our industry and sector and they're saying, I've got this great idea because somewhere along the line, my dad told me it was a great idea, but I've taken it and I've modernised it and I'm going to put a bit of AI behind it as well. So I think it's one of those. I think it's potentially
Andrew,
just.
Mate, you've just lost yourself into cynicism, mate. No. I totally get what you're saying, and you actually mentioned really interesting things. The generational side of it, and it is a lot of branding. I mean, there is a lot of retreading on those things, and there's almost a consultancy-driven kind of motivation to do it sometimes. You remember all the war for talent? That was like, okay, kind of a huge money maker for McKinsey who invented that idea. And then suddenly they can, by capturing the concept, you basically create a little market that you can dominate. So maybe there's an element of that. But in some defense, I think there is a difference because it got me thinking, like, does skill require knowledge? Because knowledge is like because apparently knowledge is not important anymore because we've got ChatGPT and there's your knowledge, no issue. So if that's the case, is skill separate from knowledge? If not, can we train someone who is zero skill, just fill the guy with knowledge, suddenly they can do it? Or is it actually a different thing? And it feels like it's a different thing. So you can have a person who's super knowledgeable at, let's say, coding, but they may actually be unskilled at this. So what is the skill component? That I think is still something that needs to be explored. Like I can kick a ball. I'm unskilled at playing football, right? I am now. I mean, I was all right when I was younger, but now, good Lord, right? Terrible. So that skills fade, by the way. But so what is skill? Skill is some sort of combination of maybe using knowledge and applying it in some way that is planned. Like, so in other words, this person knows how to do this, has the knowledge. There's a unique situation where I need this output, but this knowledge can help him do that. Him or her, should I say? And then boom, they've got the skill to move it from my desire, a requester, to actually an output. And it's more efficient than someone who doesn't have as good a skill. And the person that doesn't have that skill at all can't actually produce that output. I mean, I think something like that. So maybe it's a translation of the knowledge to an output, maybe. I don't know. I mean, thoughts on that? Maria, you're nodding your head, so I'm very encouraged. I want to basically get you in because you're agreeing with me, and that's good.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of stuff that's being said. I think it's just different sides to this, right? And at the end of the day, it depends on the organization and the industry probably you're at and the people you have around you, right? Well, from my point of view, and certainly the companies that I'm helping and working with, and in general, I would say, right, like from what I've seen, there's a lot of work to kind of implement all of this, whether it's hiring or skills-based organization in general. A lot of work. It's really complex. There's several factors here. Some of it is that, even tech skills, the life shelf is kind of really very, very limited of these tech skills. Everything changes like at a very fast pace, right? How do we keep in, kind of ahead of this, right? For whole companies, right? And then
let me quickly interrupt Maria, because I think it's a very important point Maria is making. The assessment of a skill is a snapshot, it's a photograph, right? And like, how do we know, as I mentioned, the football thing, skills fade. Your skills might actually decrease over time. This is why I was always critical of people who were saying, yeah, I got 10 years experience of doing this.
Yeah,
mate, it was 10 years ago that you did this. It doesn't mean you have like 10 years of experience doing it. So how do we keep the maintenance of the skill? Go ahead, Maria, sorry.
Also, a lot of success is contextual. Let's not forget that, right? Like you can have 20, 30 skills that are required to do a job well in company A. Would that translate in success in company B, right? Like, success is, all about the system, it is about the team, the manager, the culture. It is about your values. Are they a good match with the company values? And none of this is captured by the definition of skills, I feel. So, why I mentioned competencies in the beginning is that I feel like we are going back in time, that we're kind of focusing on a more narrow aspect of what a person is about, because competency, yes, maybe is complex, Matthias was saying, but at the same time, it captures more. It captures values, attitudes, mindsets, and then also captures things like experience that's on top, right? And now lately, and preferences, like who wants to work from home, who wants to work in the office, like it's really complex, right? When you think about all these things. So then implementing something like that, I think for me, it's always about the cost versus benefit, right? What is the benefit of this? Is it clear for us all what the benefit is, right? For me, the answer is probably not. It's pushed by a couple of consultancies and vendors, probably, from what I've seen, but, prove me wrong. And then what is the cost, So if the benefit is unclear and the cost is massive, what are we doing here? Why are we doing it?
All right, Maria, you made your point. Matthias wants to come in, so let's go, Maria.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree, right? I think, honestly, if your practices work for you and your corporation, your organization right now, don't do it, right? But most of the time when I come in, and this is just an anecdotal here, people tell me, hey, fix hiring. But actually what I do, I fix culture, I fix leadership, I fix everything else because it's being surfaced in the hiring processes the most, right? Yeah. So, okay, let's go back. I think one thing that is super important that you mentioned here is job experience. Folks, seriously. We all know in academia, it's been out there, there are meta-analysis on this. Job experience has no prediction to future job performance. Please stop with that nonsense of saying 10 years experience will make this person a senior person in the job. Yeah, there are people who can do this in 2 years that other people can do in 7, 8 years. You said like contextual. I totally agree. Yeah, so years of experience, bad measurement, not good, right? And I think then what you also need to think about is a little bit the topic of cost. I totally agree, to transition into skill-based hiring is a lot of effort, especially for big corporates. But look, let's be honest. What I think our profession is so obsessed about, and we are not changing it because it actually manifests the status quo. We still believe, everyone here, that resumes display the best way of what people can do. Seriously, this is the first reason why biases exist, because it's the most biased document in the world. And we still, all of you here, believe that we need resumes to assess people's capabilities. This is crazy. So, and just because we say, look, we want to reduce biases, Why are we not start actively getting rid of resumes? People telling it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. It's the same thing like candidate experience. Everybody's talking about it. Nobody's fixing it. Why are we not starting to make a real effort in what the value of TA is, and then starting to fix our core problems and not just say, oh, but that's too much. Nah, that's too much work. No, that costs me too much. No, I'm not going to do this. This is crazy, people. Seriously.
Yeah,
Well-
really good point. Really good point. Let me just say this, by the way. Maybe the motivation behind skills-based hiring in the first instance, in this iteration of it at least, it is a kind of an attack against the resume. It's an attack against the CV and credentialism and experience, which I think all of us are. There's not many people are banging the drum for the CV.
Exactly.
CV per se. So that's why we had initial sympathy for it. So I think very, very good point. Folks, Dan, before I bring you in, I just want to say we always do kind of a quick break in the middle of every show. I know it's only like 10, 15 minutes to go. We'll do it now anyway. This is obviously a conversation that needs to keep going. We're probably doing a part 2 on this. However, we don't want Brainfood Live to be a conversation starter and then a conversation stopper, because the conversation should go on. And the only way it's going to go on is if everyone who is involved in this or cares about this topic finds the opportunity to connect with each other and then continue the conversation when we go off air as we need to. So take a moment, grab your LinkedIn URL and share it in the chat stream if you're watching this on Crowdcast. Then make sure you connect with everyone who's done the same. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, by the way, we're up to about 180 people on LinkedIn somehow. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, do the same thing. Grab your LinkedIn URL and share it in the comment thread. And then you've got a list of people you can go and connect with that care about this topic of skills-based hiring. Worst case scenario, you walk away here with 50, 60 cool contacts that you otherwise wouldn't have had, and your education and your network power will improve. Okay, cool. Let's move on to this. Dan, I'll bring you in on this. And I'm going to just follow up with Maria's key criticism was that the switching cost is very high, it seems. So in other words, yes, recruiting in the same way with CVs and so on isn't optimal, but the cost of switching away from that seems like it's like mega high. And it's not obvious that we're going to get that amount of value back for the price of switching it, other than, and Matthias, you make a very good point, maybe we need to make the early sacrifice to shift it to a better state, right? Perhaps that's something we need to do. But Dan, your thoughts on the switching costs moving from skills-based, from credentialism to skills-based hiring?
No, I think you hit it on the head. It completely lacks the value. And I think to your point right back at the beginning about the bricklayer, and even to Matthias's point, I think we're just misguided. It's not what someone has that's important, it's what they do with what they have. So just hiring for skills doesn't really mean much. It's how we measure the skills. And I think that's the biggest critique here. I could probably build a wall, but I wouldn't be employed in a construction company as a bricklayer. I make a pretty mean spag bowl, but I'm not a chef. So I definitely have the skills, but I couldn't do the work. So I think we need to move away from trying to, and I used this example in a previous tech company. When I first joined, they said that they needed, X amount of software engineers with Node.js, JavaScript or Angular. So I put 5 or 6 people in the interview process and we didn't hire one. And I said, can I prove that your interview process is flawed? Because I got the skills that you asked for, but we didn't hire them because what you actually did with the assessment was assess how good they were with those skills. So I think we just need to move away from the term like whatever skills we have. And to Matthias's point, I completely agree. Hiring is broken. We all have to accept that. It was broken before our generation. It'll be broken beyond our generation. CVs aren't just the problem. Interviewing is the problem. If we accept that we will interview someone to give them a job, is that a good indicator that they can do the work? I mean, ultimately for us, would you interview someone and then let them jump in the car as a driving instructor? Absolutely not. So we've got to understand that we need to assess what someone has and how they do with it. And ultimately any experience before we see as indicative of future success. But the reality is we just need to understand the work. When we go out there and describe skills, degrees or certain skills, we're describing a person. We're not describing the work. And AI has already taught us that we don't need to hire a person. We would hire a dog if they could do the work. We will use a computer if they can do the work. So describe the work, speak to people, let them, inform you how they can do the work. And ultimately what you will do is create a broader, diverse slate and actually hire people not with a set of skills that you thought you needed, but people that can actually achieve performance in the role.
Wow, there's some really interesting thoughts just emerging from all of this, such as the degree of skill and the application of it in the work, two different things. I think that's definitely true as well. So is there an assessment that is credible enough to accurately reflect? I think you did mention, Matthias, some of the Mabriclair example I think is pretty good, but it's not perfect because obviously maybe this guy doesn't have the stamina to lift, however many bricks it requires to do the job on a full time. Do it in an assessment, but not in a full time thing. So it's interesting. And a further thing that was a point you made, Dan, which is really quite profound, was that perhaps you can't do it through a recruiting process. So in other words, we know skills through working with people. So in other words, when you're working in a community or working with a team or whatever, you can probably figure out, this person's really good at that. Or they're really good at this, that, and the other. But that's like working with them over time. So you're figuring it out in a kind of a non-assessment type situation. Whereas recruitment, you kind of got to stop that. You got to create a fake thing to say, right, it's almost like a performance. That performance isn't that close to reality. It's not how it actually works. So
you need to get it. You need to get it as close to reality as you can. And I think what we've got to accept is there is no exact science, and anything we do for recruiting is minimizing the risk. How much risk are we able to take through this process to try and get the right signal or the right read that, this person, whatever we can see, assess, or analyze, is indicative of what we see as success. And I've just seen in the comments, motivation is a huge factor. For me, you've just got to be competent and motivated. When I left agency hiring to move in-house and I put my CV out there, I was getting more and more job offers, paying me more than what I ever did in agency previously. But I didn't want to do that no more. I wasn't going to stand up, from 9 a.m. till 10 a.m. until I got a first job on. I wasn't going to go and ring a bell or make 300 sales calls anymore. So just because I had all this experience, like Matthias said, before, about having, this experience, it wasn't going to translate in terms of what I wanted to do. So I think motivation and competence is super important, and just generally not the skills, but like what can you go and do with those skills.
All right, so skills basically doesn't capture everything. We know that. So it's good that we're starting to understand that it's not like a magical solution, but it still certainly has value in comparison to, let's say, credentialism, because credentialism is like, we need to move beyond that. Do we agree on that at least?
Why don't we move away and simplify the whole thing, not necessarily adopting a skill-based hiring, like just remove the degree requirement from the job description. It's easier.
I think Lou Adler does it quite well, where he moves away from the job description, just like Maria suggested, and into what they call performance-based hiring, which is analyzing the work in 5 to maybe 8 key objectives. And I think he calls it hire for the anniversary date as opposed to hire for the start date. To say you sat down with your stakeholder at the end of year 1, you'd say, why was this a good hire? And they would list off 3 or 4 or maybe 5 things that they achieved. Try and understand that up the front, like what does this work need to achieve? Instead of for recruitment saying must have 5 years experience, actually say must be able to hire 100 people in 12 months. And then what that individual will do with that 5 years experience, maybe 3 years, like you mentioned before, maybe 10 years, will be able to explain how they can do the work, not just have this, X amount of experience. It doesn't necessarily translate into performance on the job.
But isn't it how you achieve the objective, the skill then? Don't you just want to say, okay, the objective, they are 100%, and then you wonder, how did they do it? No? Is that not what we are looking for?
No, skills is more narrow. Like what motivates you, what drives you is not captured by skills.
Well, not what the motivation does, no, sure, but that doesn't mean just because you go for skill-based hiring, you keep everything out of, like, motivation is not checked anymore. I mean, look, of course, they're going to check on
values. What you value, is that a match with the company that you're at? Like, I think there's so much that skills that is not captured.
No, on this thing, you're right, Maria. It's not captured, but there's other ways to do it. So in other words, skills-based hiring is like a component. I think it's a weighting, right? It's a weighting system.
But we've had this. We've had this for several decades. It's always been part of interviewing and hiring, like competency-based questions. How is this different now?
Okay, and why is recruiting then broken if we already had it? Like, that is then the question, because then it's not working, right? Then we are not working it. We're not using it right. Because the competencies is so complex that people, like the normal hiring manager, this is recruiting for like once a year, then, you know, for them, it's like, oh man, such a competency net approach. This is too complicated. This is like, how do I check all of this? How are we coaching people enough? Are we training them enough? Do they understand this well enough? I think this is where the broken system
these
comes
are
from.
different problems then, Matthias, right? Even if we move to a skills-based organization or hiring, these things like education of internal kind of stakeholders, hiring managers, etc., is not going to be solved on its own.
No, but you can't hammer out something for not solving every problem.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's like, yes, it's not a perfect solution, but is there value in it, particularly when we want to degrade the weighting of the CV, for instance? I mean, by the way, this is just purely your choice as a company, right? So I don't see anybody making, I don't know, maybe there are some laws. I don't know. Are there any countries that have literally banned use of academic qualifications? I mean, there'll be some crazy local government somewhere that else, so some city-based thing would have happened. So anyway, we're not advocating for that. What we're saying is, or at least I'm now an advocate, right? So what I'm saying is that basically this is why I have no principles. The value of having no beliefs is that you can just adopt the one that's most useful. So the value of doing skills-based hiring is that it's just a component of a wider recruitment approach. You are going to do the cultural fit, you are going to do the valuation, but you're kind of elevating it ahead of the skills and sort of ahead of the experience. And you test for it. You basically have hopefully a real world assessment, I guess. But there may be technologies that can help you do that. I mean, I've got some doubts on because the tech. Is there tech? Let's just move this question now. Is there tech that can test the skills, or do we need to fabricate like an assessment per role, which is part of the practical problem because it's not scalable, right? So, Matthias, I have to ask you, like, is there a technology apart from HackerRank for coding or whatever? Is there a general tool?
We use High People. It's a Berlin-based company. They kind of did a TA and tech talent ops kind of tests. They actually for marketing purposes asked all of the TA leaders around the world to score this, and then they advocated the scores in the top 10 list. So kind of had my cutoff score then. I used this, I sent this around. My requirement back then in the role was to just, you wanted to be in Berlin or want to relocate to Berlin. That was the only requirement for this role back then. And then I sent it out to people. People told me, oh, if you send out a test before even interviewing, nobody will do that. Well, I had an 8% bounce rate and 92% of the people actually did the test. And it was over 100 people. And literally what we had is that they felt they were measured, less biased. They actually got a result. They got learning opportunities based on that test before they even talked to a person. And literally, that was, I ended up people doing the test and applied just because doing the test. They wanted to do the test. So it felt for them, especially for internationals, that a lot of discrimination happening in interview processes felt like a fair chance and a fair try to give their best in the way of how they have been assessed, right? And I think here it's not the knowledge, but how they apply their knowledge to certain situations, which was tested here, right? It was not, do you know talent ops, the definition of talent ops or talent intelligence? That was not the question, right? It was like, how would you go about in a certain situation? What would you do there? And that was very successful for us, at least.
Yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. All right, we're moving really towards the end of this show, so we have to kind of close off. But obviously, this is a conversation we need to keep digging into. Let me know, folks, in the comments whether you want me to do a part 2, maybe even a part 3 on this. It seems that we should dive further forward. And if it's popular enough, we'll give it a shot. Let's go for the final round robin on this. In terms of sort of skills-based hiring, what would you say is the thing that would change your mind for the skeptics? What is the thing that would change your mind about giving skills-based hiring a go? Like what feature, what condition would you look for? And for the people who are advocates, what would make it easier for more companies to adopt? So let's go with Andrew first. What are your thoughts on that?
Don't believe I need my mind changed. I'm a fan of skills-based hiring. I just don't think it's new. I think it's something we've already done. But I think what I've heard from this, it's hugely subjective to each industry, country, and then right down to job role, job type. It's going to work successfully in some things and not at all in others. So I think it's really going to have to be choice. And every hire and recruitment process is a risk anyway. And I suppose to Dan's point about you need to test those skills, but that's a probation period. So there's different things that we can put in. If you want a fast recruitment process because you want a fast experience for people, then skills-based hiring and adding things in might actually change that experience. So I've come away with mixed opinions, maybe more mixed than what I came in with. But I think to me, it's hugely subjective. You've got to get it right at the right time for the right role and not generalize everything.
Yeah, very good. Maria, your thoughts on this?
I'm not convinced. I think for me, like, where's the evidence? Really, I can't see anything. Like, whether people enjoy doing an assessment or not, that does not tell me anything. Have we hired well for this role? Have we, kind of performed on key indicators, etc.? Is the company performing well? What problems are we solving? Those things, I'm still not convinced. Maybe Matthias and I have a, virtual coffee, and then we can continue the conversation. Yeah.
We all watch this virtual coffee session.
I will be live. LinkedIn live.
Just don't let him drink out of your vase that he's been drinking out of this session.
Okay, Dan, your thoughts on this, mate?
Yeah, I wouldn't be changing in my mind. I mean, I've pretty much built a career going into organizations to unpick skills-based hiring. I think, generally across talent, we use the wrong information to make the wrong decisions. And, the kind of anyone in our industry that I've really kind of looked at doing something actually different was Lou Adler and his performance-based hiring and trying to rip up this concept of JDs and as Matthias said, CVs and interviewing and that really kind of feels a shift compared to all the technology that we've seen probably in our lifetime come in and help enable us to get to people or maybe look at them in different guises. But ultimately, I won't be changing my mind anytime soon. Although I am getting old, so it doesn't.
I was going to say, might as well just check it in now, mate. It's done. No, that's fine. Okay, let's go with you, Matthias. What are your final thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's part of the solution of enhancing our talent practices going forward, and it's definitely worth taking a chance here. I also believe if I would come to a place where we remove resumes completely, that we hire better. And I totally agree with a couple of points that also Dan made, right? We're using the wrong information for making the decisions. And therefore, skills could be one part of enhancing our decision making by being more evidence based. And that are my two final thoughts. But I love the conversation, so thank you all.
No, great, and thank you for being an advocate, Matthias. You're outnumbered here for this one. Okay, Christine, final thoughts for you. I mean, you came in here with kind of like a soft
open mind. No, it was great. It was great learning from everybody. Obviously, like I was very easily swayed by everyone's thoughts and feedback. But look, I think it's just in my world, in the world of quantum computing, it is very kind of specific skill sets, and it would be quite hard for us to move to like skills based at the moment, just because it's a purely new industry. But definitely something I took away was around the content skills and cognitive skills, right? How do you differentiate that programming language, let's say the examples that we're using, and applying that in real life? I think, someone developing an MVP versus a product that's already, that just needs maintaining is two very different skill sets. So I think there's something there in terms of what you're actually measuring a step further from the actual cognitive skills itself. So yeah, that's something I'm going to take away.
Fantastic. Dan, if you're wearing a cap, can you just lean a little bit further forward so everyone can see it? Because everyone needs to screen cap that and share it with everybody. Listen, we're out of time, everyone. So thank you very much for joining. Let's thank our guests, Dan Logan, Maria Koza, Andrew Greer, and Matthias Schmieser. Wonderful to see you all. Hopefully we'll connect with you all soon again. So let's say goodbye to these folks here. What a great conversation. And you know what? One of the things I think could solve a lot of these problems is, in fact, the technology. And we go back to Yasmin's point. Like a big part of the issue was collecting the information. Do we have an accurate way to collect it? Do we have an accurate way to assess for it? And it's like, it got me thinking, maybe recruitment is the wrong place to think about it, because if you're in the office, you're in the workplace or whatever, I've got tons of data from you.
Yeah.
And I will be able to tell you, if I had something like TechWolf to be able to predict, you know what, when Hungy's got a project, he's always going to be late.
Yeah. It's like my mind's, yeah. Yeah, but it made me think about the time when I was working at a mobile development agency, and I imagine big companies like Accenture or even McKinsey would think about this, because you got a lot of resource planning on projects, right? So you've got a lot of talent that's going to be on the bench. So how are you looking at redeploying talent? If there's a skills kind of matrix internally that you can look at deploying people on projects. So I think that would be really interesting to also look at like internal resourcing tooling as well, which when I was very manual.
Capacity planning and all this, because you can then sort of understand the output capability of someone. Like someone going to take a little bit longer to do stuff. Other people are really fast getting stuff out, and those things actually make a difference in things like team composition. Like if your pace is, it's like having horses in a, for some reason I'm just thinking about Ben-Hur, you got those 4 horses, you slow someone on the inside. So yeah, how you get your horses together is dependent on how fast they run.
It's so hard though. Like one of my best engineers that we hired, like he never coded in Ruby on Rails ever, and he was like a Python engineer, and he learned it in a week, and he was our best engineer like in 6 months, right? So it's also really hard to look at how do you actually, like, I'm not testing him for those skills at that point, but anyway, I digress. But it's just so much to think about, and yeah, what an awesome session today. Hopefully
we're getting great feedback, and everyone actually the how to do it. I think, Alicia, that's a really good point. So maybe we know there's a debate, but there's a bunch of people that actually are very keen to kind of start embedding this and bring it in. So maybe for this we bring Matthias back, and maybe some other people that are just literally less advocates, but like experience. So I wanted to also unpack Matthias's experience with regards to skills-based career pathing, for instance, which seemed to be quite an interesting thing to think about. So yeah, maybe we'll do that again next time. All right, listen, we're away. We're back next week. I will actually be in Toronto next week, but I will be getting up early in order to deliver Brainfood Live. We're going to be talking about the future of job boards, folks, in the AI-generated world. What is the future of job boards? Is it finished? Is there another way where job boards can make money? Think about all the data that flows into a job board. Do they start becoming more of a data licenser rather than someone who's selling job ads? We've got a load of really smart people. By the way, Stephen Rothberg's on the chat here. Please do come on and join the show. Bill Fisher's going to join. Chris Russell's going to join. Louise Triance is going to be there. Alexander Chukovsky is going to be there. Basically, everyone who knows anything about job boards, they're all going to be there. So if you're interested in job boards and job advertising generally, that's the show for you. Make sure you sign up, follow the channel, and to be notified on that. But we'll be back next week on Friday at 2 p.m. Okay, that's it. See you next time.
Bye.
Cool.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right, sun. We're gonna head to the sun.
Yeah. Sorry. Go and enjoy the sunshine.
Yeah, you too. Are you doing anything this weekend?
You what?
Are you doing up too much?
I'm still mega busy. I've got like these talks to prepare for, which I'm obviously not prepared for. So I've got to go and do that.
Are you at RL 100 next month?
It depends which one. Which one is this?
Well, that's the thing. I didn't realize they were doing 2 in parallel, but I'm going to the one in Crewe.
Are they at the same time?
Yeah, I didn't know. Like I was speaking to Bertie the other day. He was like, "Yeah, are you going?" And we realized it was the same dates but different places. So I'm going to the one in Crewe.
Oh dear. I'm in Whistable.
I'm trying to get in that one.
Far superior. This is the A and B list. That's the A and B.
By the post, can't complain. I did email them and say any chance I could change and have this, and it's oversubscribed. So
go. All right, listen, I'll let you go. Have a good weekend. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, okay? Have a Friday, everyone. Bye.